Okay, this video is looking at the 3 marks of existence, again for paper 1, Buddhist beliefs. So the success criteria today, all of you should be able to list the 3 marks of existence. There's no order for this list. Explain 2 Buddhist beliefs about each of the 3 marks of existence. Bear in mind you could get a question about the 3 marks of existence generally, or you could get asked a question specifically about one of each of the 3 marks of existence. So you need to make sure that you know 2 Buddhist beliefs about each of them. Explain 2 ways belief in the 3 marks of existence influence Buddhists today. Again, you could get asked a question, a 4 marker generally, or you could get asked one specific to each of the 3 marks of existence. And we'll look at evaluation skill relating to the 3 marks of existence also. So what are the 3 marks of existence? Well, you should know that they are anicca, anatta, and dukkha. So these 3 marks of existence are basically 3 key truths about reality, about life that the Buddha discovered. And Buddhists believe that they describe the universe and reality, how it really truly is. So the first one there displayed is anicca, impermanence, the idea that everything changes, nothing lasts forever. Then we've got anatta, the idea of no self or no fixed eternal self. Might include the idea of no soul, nothing's permanent, there's no unchanging part of your nature or self. And then we've got dukkha, which is the idea of suffering or unsatisfactoriness. Life always contains some suffering, stress, dissatisfaction, things like that. Buddhists believe that understanding these 3 marks of existence helps reduce ignorance, one of the 3 poisons, helps reduce attachment or tanna, craving, and dukkha itself, suffering, and guides them towards enlightenment. Here we have 3 key quotes. All of these are taught by the Buddha and found in the Pali Canon, the Dhammapada part of the Pali Canon. So all conditioned things are impermanent. That relates to anicca, impermanence. All conditioned things means everything. Everything in the universe that is conditioned and depends on other things for its existence, which is everything, because of the concept of dependent arising. So all conditioned things are impermanent. And if you look at the last quote there, very, very similar. All conditioned things are unsatisfactory. So there's no perfect form of anything. Everything can get destroyed, misplaced, emotional related change, etc. So everything in the universe is suffering or unsatisfactory. Everything in the universe is impermanent. The other one, all phenomena, again, all that means is all things are not self. The idea of no self or no soul there. So they're 3 relatively straightforward quotes that link to each of the 3 marks of existence. So what we're going to do now, the next 3 slides, is going to take each of the marks of existence in turn, have a little look at some beliefs and also some influences on each belief. So the first mark of existence that we're going to look at is anicca, meaning impermanence. Buddhists believe that everything changes. People age and people die. Feelings come and feelings go. Situations never stay the same. Everything that feels permanent are basically slowly changing. So you might think, well, no, my house is permanent, but it wasn't always there and it won't always be there. You might say, oh yeah, but the sun is impermanent. It wasn't always there and it won't always be there. So just because some things last a long time doesn't mean to say that they was always there and will always be there. And even then, things change. Things inside your house layout, your building. has either upskilled or deteriorated in many ways. The sun is constantly changing with solar storms, etc. So the Buddha taught that suffering happens because people cling on to things that are changing but don't realize that they will change. Like a possession. I use the example of your Xbox or your PlayStation. You've got it, you love it, you cling on to it. But the second it breaks or you lose something about it, or the electricity goes off or something, that creates dukkha, suffering. So we've got this idea of, oh no, I'm loving this, I'm enjoying it. I've recently come back off a holiday, absolutely loved it. In the back of my head, I knew that eventually this holiday will go. That beautiful sun and sea on the horizon view is now not in front of me. So it does eventually change. Possessions, relationships, ideas. When we refuse to accept change, we suffer more. There's a really, really good story to help understand this in Buddhism, and it's the story of Kissa Gotami. Kissa Gotami was a mother whose young child had died. Heartbroken, she begged the Buddha to bring her child back to life. The Buddha told her, "Bring me a handful of mustard seeds from a house that has never known death." She went from house to house, but in every single home, someone had died. And then the realization happened. Kissa Gotami realized that death and change happen to everyone. She was still suffering, but she realized she was not alone in her suffering, and that loss and change, anicca, is part of life. Through this experience, she understood anicca and began to accept her grief. So therefore, that lovely brings us on to an influence. Understanding that anicca is inevitable, understanding that nothing lasts forever, helps you in the grieving process of a loved one, a loved pet, for example, when they eventually grow old and die, and dealing with the emotions that arise from that. Even the emotions themselves of grief will eventually dissipate or change. So some influences additional to that are accept change and loss more peacefully. Avoid clinging on to possessions, the Xbox, for example, and people as well. Be mindful and appreciate living in the moment, knowing that this moment will pass. So take in the moment, live mindfully, mindfulness meditation. Try to reduce any addictions or cravings, tanha, that you have, any attachments that you have to material objects, for example. Reminding ourselves the Buddha taught in the Pali Canon, all conditioned things are impermanent. Okay, so having a look at anatta, the idea of no self or not self. The second mark of existence that we're going to look at is anatta, meaning no fixed self. Buddhists believe that we do not have a permanent soul, like many other religious traditions believe in. No unchanging identity. Yes, we all have a personality. Yes, we all have an identity, but it is subject to anicca, change, impermanence, because all conditioned things are impermanent, as the Buddha taught. So we do not have an eternal, unchanging soul. Instead, a human is made up of constantly changing parts called the five aggregates or the five skandhas. These skandhas were form, sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. These skandhas or aggregates, as they call them, are constantly in flux, constantly changing. Our body is in constant motion. That's our form. Our feelings are in constant change. So there's no fixed soul part of human personality. We will have a look at human personality in another video. Since these are always changing, however, There cannot be a permanent me. There cannot be a permanent you. You look at a picture of yourself when you was a baby or when you was 5 years old, you are different to the person that you're looking back at. They might say it's an illusion or a delusion to look back at that photograph and go, that is me. Since things are always changing, there cannot be a permanent self. Again, there is a great key story to help understand this one. It's a very famous Buddhist story that explains the idea of anatta, called Nagasena and the Chariot. A monk called Nagasena was asked, "Who are you really?" by a king, King Milinda. He replied with a question. If you take a chariot apart, its wheels, axles, seat and reins, where is the chariot? It isn't found in any one part. It only exists when the parts come together. In the same way, a person is only a collection of parts and processes. There is no single permanent self. This helps Buddhists understand that identity is temporary and constructed. It's not fixed. So it might be more accurate to say, who are you today? Who are you now? And you can talk about your feelings, your emotions, your body, your mental formations, your consciousness in this moment, rather than in the past or future tense. Again, what are the influences of belief in anatta? Well, if you are less focused on a permanent self, a permanent soul, a me, then you're going to be less inclined to think egotistically. Egotistically, or being ego focused, is putting yourself as number one all the time. You'll be less selfish. You'll realize the concept of dependent arising, that we're all interconnected. Helping somebody else is helping somebody else is helping yourself. We all work together. So it can reduce pride and arrogance. Again, like anicca, if nothing has a permanent self, you realize that you can let go of attachments and cravings to things, specifically your own identity. Not be too caught up in how you label yourself, not be too caught up in how you define yourself, who you are, realizing that who you are is in constant change. It will help you develop compassion, karuna, seeing that all beings are changing and therefore we're all interconnected. And they also might meditate on the concept of anatta, to observe thoughts and feelings without clinging on to them. It might be worth noting here that Mahayana Buddhists go a step further and believe in sunyata. So not just that we don't have a soul or a permanent self, but we are essentially empty. And we'll understand this emptiness within nirvana. I will do a talk about that in a later video in more detail. It is not a negative concept. The idea of sunyata, emptiness, a lot of students write in a test, this is bad, we don't like this. No, in Mahayana Buddhism, sunyata is a sense of peace almost, because of emptiness, because you're empty of all the bad things. All the negative karma, for example. So I'll talk about that in more detail because it is a lot more complex than that. But for now, you could say that that links to this idea of anatta, the Mahayana belief in emptiness. And finally, the third mark of existence is dukkha. We've talked a lot about dukkha. And if these are the three realities of the world, I think it goes without saying that pain and suffering and not nice things are definitely part of the way the world works. So it means suffering, dissatisfaction, it can mean stress. Buddhists believe that life always contains some form of dukkha. This does not mean life is only miserable. We know that we have fun times in life too, but that nothing brings permanent satisfaction. There are three types of dukkha in Buddhism. We've got ordinary suffering, like illness, pain, death, sadness. Then we've got suffering from anicca, dukkha from anicca, suffering from impermanence, when good things end, right? That power cut when you're playing your Xbox and you're just about to get to the next level or whatever you're on, and then the power cut happens and you get really angry or frustrated. That is because of attachment to other things, and also suffering from attachment, always craving more. So addiction, for example, never being satisfied. Dukkha is closely linked to the Four Noble Truths, as we have already explored. The first noble truth, dukkha exists, it's inevitable. That's essentially the mark of existence we're talking about here. The second noble truth, dukkha, the cause of dukkha, the cause of suffering. Third noble truth, the end of suffering. And the fourth noble truth, the Eightfold Path, how to end suffering. So how does it influence today? Well, belief in dukkha influences or encourages Buddhists to take suffering seriously and face it head on. Try not to bury their head in their hands like this picture of this dude here. But to take it seriously and honestly. Be mindful, practice mindfulness. Some Buddhists will experience pain and they will meditate on that pain, acknowledging that this is a temporary but real phenomena that's happening to them now. It might encourage them to follow the Eightfold Path, because the Eightfold Path, the Fourth Noble Truth, is the way to end suffering. It might encourage them to give up cravings, tanha, because obviously that is a cause of dukkha, according to the Second Noble Truth. It might help them develop karuna and metta, compassion and loving kindness for other people and animals that suffer. It might give them hope that suffering can be reduced, because, again, the three marks of existence are working together. So yes, dukkha is inevitable, but so is anicca and change. So impermanence will also affect dukkha. So dukkha will come and go, just like everything else. And if we remind ourselves the Buddhist teaching here, what I teach is suffering and the cessation, the end of suffering. So a few questions based on this. Now, which is the mark of existence that refers to no self? And the answer here, of course, is anatta. Anatta is the idea of no self or no soul. Next one. What do Buddhists mean when they refer to anicca? And here the answer, of course, is A. All things are impermanent. B would be dukkha, C would be anatta, and D is obviously talking about the law of cause and effect and karma. The answer, unfortunately, is already written in front of you on this one. Give the key term for the mark of existence that refers to unsatisfactoriness and suffering. The answer there would be dukkha. And same here too. Give one Buddhist teaching on anatta, the belief that we do not have a soul. So this one, explain two ways belief in the three marks of existence influence Buddhists today. Worth noting at this point that you could get asked a question that asks you about a specific one of the three marks of existence. So you could be asked, explain two ways belief in anicca influences Buddhists today, or two ways belief in dukkha influences Buddhists today. So just be really, really careful to read the question. Pause the video and have a go at that one. Okay. So if you have a little look at this answer here, I have decided to answer it separately, talk about two of the three marks of existence because it only asks for two, and use that phrase, this makes Buddhists, and give a real example. I could have, however, done it differently and talked about the 3 marks of existence in general. I do feel that's a harder way to answer the question myself, but it is a legitimate way to answer it. So Buddhists teach that dukkha is inevitable. There's one belief about the 3 marks of existence. This makes Buddhists accept suffering as part of life. For example, help come to terms with the loss of a loved one. Always good to give a little example. Buddhists believe that all things are impermanent and change is inevitable. Probably would have been better if they would have used the keyword anicca there. This makes Buddhists resist temptations to deny change, such as using Botox or dyeing grey hair. These things are clinging on to the present, your youth, and denying the aging process, for example. Okay, another example of a question, a 6 marker. Explain 2 Buddhist teachings on the 3 marks of existence. Refer to sacred writing or another source of Buddhist belief and teaching. So again, you could choose 2 of the 3 marks of existence and explain those, or you could talk about the 3 marks of existence a lot more generally, or how they all interlink with each other or relate to dependent arising or are a core part of the Dharma. There's many ways you can answer this question. Again, I feel that the easiest way to answer this question is choose 2 of the 3 marks of existence and explain those points. Pause the video now and I'll show you a waggle in a second. Okay, so here is an example of a 6 out of 6 response. The first part of each paragraph is the belief. The blue part, the light blue part, is an explanation of that belief. But with one of the 2 beliefs, you must also give a source and explain and apply it back to the question. So here's a response that scores 6 out of 6. Buddhists teach that dukkha is inevitable and an unavoidable part of life, the belief. I'm going to explain this now with an example. Examples of dukkha can be physical or mental, and all beings will experience suffering in their lives. Now I'm going to give a quote with a source. The Pali Canon states, "What I teach is suffering and the cessation of suffering." And now I'm going to apply it right back to the question. And this shows that this mark of existence is the main concern of Buddha, as it is also the foundation of the 4 Noble Truths. Next paragraph is just a simple belief and then developed in an explanation. Buddhists also teach anatta, no self, that all beings are without an eternal soul and were all subject to change due to dependent arising. Okay, and finally, I've just got one evaluation statement here. Dukkha is the most important of the 3 marks of existence. Be a good idea now to pause the video and come up with as many arguments for and against this statement as you can. Okay, so some arguments for, well, the 4 Noble Truths are directly led by dukkha. So the 4 Noble Truths is a core part of Buddhism, and if we remember, it's about the truth of dukkha, the cause of dukkha, the end of dukkha, and the way to end dukkha through the Eightfold Path. Also, you could say that our human life, we all experience dukkha. We all know it's very much part of the problems that humans face in the world. It describes what our main problems are. So dukkha is the core of life. We can all look back at times where we've experienced it and it's caused us significant grief or anxiety. The Buddha himself heavily taught about suffering. In fact, the quote, "What I teach is suffering and the cessation of suffering," really could be used there as a strong bit of evidence to support this claim. Dukkha motivates people to seek enlightenment. It motivates Buddhists. If you remember the first 3 sites, old man, sick man, dead man, all of these are examples of dukkha, and they motivated Buddha to try and find a way out of suffering. You might argue that dukkha feels the most relevant of the three marks to daily life. And without recognizing suffering, Buddhism wouldn't even be needed. We wouldn't have to have Buddhism, a way out of suffering, if there was no suffering in the first place. It explains why craving and attachment is dangerous. It helps us to encourage compassion towards others that might experience suffering, including animal life too. It shapes Buddhist practice and their behaviour today. It's most Buddhist monks and nuns, when they give speeches on retreats or in temples, a lot of their thinking and a lot of the sermons are tied to this concept of dukkha. But why isn't it? The arguments against, obviously, the easiest way to argue against is, well, no, anicca is, or well, no, anatta is. But don't forget, you could argue that all three marks of existence work together. They're not alone. We suffer because of attachment, because we cling to things that are in constant change. Or the idea of clinging onto yourself and not realizing that yourself is in constant flux because of the idea of anatta, no soul. So dependent arising might give an even deeper explanation of reality, and dependent arising is very much linked to anicca. Enlightenment is about wisdom. It's not just about suffering. So studying anicca and anatta and the teachings that accompany them might be more important. You could argue that anicca explains why suffering happens, and anatta explains who suffers, and why the idea of self is an illusion or a delusion. You could argue that happiness is an important part of Buddhism, and dukkha only focuses on the negative, the unsatisfactory, the suffering. Remember, anatta could be more spiritually transformative, maybe more complex to understand. Buddhists meditate on all three of the marks of existence. There's many different ways that you could attack this question. Thank you for listening today.